necessary. These things happen in small towns, actually more frequently than we like to believe, because most of the time when dreadful things happen, it's kind of the quiet kid that nobody paid much attention to. And so what we do now is a vast array of things. So I'll try to walk you through some of the details and why we're doing them. And most people call them active shooter drills, and it's because in our world we've experienced now the threat of somebody going into a school with a firearm and creating havoc is a real thing. But we've evolved in how we train students and teachers now to react to really any type of threat, because that's not the only one. That's the one that we think about the most. It's the one that scares us the most, but it's the one that happens most infrequently. We have been teaching children for hundreds of years fire drills. Doing safety protocols in schools is not a new thing for anybody. Interestingly enough, the way we do fire drills now has changed. None of us have heard about a school burning down or a child being lost in a school fire. Certainly not in my lifetime. I don't know about everybody in the room, but it's such a rare occurrence in today's world. Our buildings are concrete and steel and glass. They're not old wood cabins anymore that used to burn down in an instant. But some of the people that want to terrorize schools, at least initially, use the fire drill as their mechanism to get people out into their arena, if you may, or into the hallways or into common spaces. So it took a while in the country to change the mindset of fire marshals, because when the fire alarm goes off now, we don't pour out of the classrooms like we used to. We usually have a teacher or two opposite ends of the hallway that will peek out and look. And when they see each other and they've made eye contact, they see the hallway is empty, they don't hear gunfire, if you may, then they line the children up and they exit the building. Because we've had active shooter cases where, when it was Parkland, where the fire alarm gets pulled, everybody pours out in the hallways, and we're trying to not fall for that same old trick, if you may, anymore. So these practices and these new skill sets that we teach children have a ripple effect on things that we've been doing for a long, long time. So we've had to reevaluate the how and the why, because we don't want to create one problem thinking we're solving another one. So I say that active shooter isn't the only thing, because we also, part of the emergency planning is a fireman showing up at the front door of a school saying, a train just derailed and spilled chlorine and the wind's blowing in this direction. Or the gas line got hit while they were putting fiber optic in the ground, and we have to evacuate the building. So all these things run hand in hand. So when we talk about lockdowns in schools, it's when everything stops, people huddle in safe spaces. And that's done for lots of reasons now, not just active shooter situations. So that has led us to what we call evacuation and reunification. Because if you have to take every child out of a school and take them somewhere else and put them back with their parent or guardian, it's really a tremendous undertaking. That's one of the main things I'm working on for the county, is if we had that situation, we would know how to go about doing it. There's a lot of moving parts. I think one of the biggest, if not the single biggest responsibility as a school system is that we never risk putting a child into the hands of somebody that they don't belong with. We have a lot of that data and those facts and information at the front desk of each school. But if I had to take everybody out of school, put them somewhere else, where are our records and how do we recapture that information? And when we have parents who are concerned or anxious and show up, it might be a good dad, but something might have happened where dad's not entitled to the child on that particular day. You have to always know those things. So I'm evaluating a program now that is through an organization called I Love You Guys. And that team of people formed all as people who were directly victimized by school shootings. They either had a family member or a child themselves lost in a school shooting, and they have formed an organization that's become very successful in how to prevent these things from happening. And I like their approach because it's very simple, it's plain speak. What we have now is a tiered approach to lockdowns where it might be a code yellow or it might be a code red. But when people are under great duress, those little nuances are difficult to remember. So the more simplistic we can make it, the better it is for everybody. So the example is the school's either open or it's closed. You don't have to remember too much. And if it's closed, you can't come in and you can't go out. And we're gonna figure out what we got. When we have a plan, everybody will move appropriately. So we teach children, if we lock down, or soon if we close, that we go into spaces where they can be hidden from direct line of sight. So most classrooms, as you know, have a window pane and a door, and maybe even a back wall of glass, so it's kind of hard to hide, but we teach people to go into a corner. That if somebody's looking in that window of the door, you can't see at that really extreme angle. So it's not hard to take 30 children, put them huddled together in the corner, and to stay quiet and make the room dark. Because active shooters, if you may, they work under impulse and they work under great stress and they work under time. So if they look in a classroom and they don't see anybody, they move on. They probably know people are there, but if they can't see you, you're not as easily victimized by them. When the Parkland shooting happened, that was probably one of the most significant investigations that's occurred so far in our country. And there's an unbelievable reenactment of the entire scene using dots that represented people. And they had so many witnesses that they were able to move the dots around in the classrooms, out of the classrooms, and the dots turned yellow or red if somebody was injured or worse. And it was fascinating to see that those that were in plain sight were the victims. Those that were in 3 or 2 feet away that were out of sight were not victims. So it really reinforced that the thought processes and the goals of what we're doing and what we're teaching is effective. The challenge I face now, maybe it's personal, and I think others probably think the way that I do, but we haven't come to a place yet in the country, which is how much training is too much training. Because we start with this with kindergartners, and then they do it again in 1st grade, and then they do it again in 2nd grade. And they do that for 12 years. And is that too much? You know, are we teaching our children that school is a scary place as opposed to a warm, inviting, joyful place to be to get an education? And those are very different extremes to balance. We don't see it yet in Henderson County. It is in some city schools in the Northeast. There are children walk through metal detectors. But boy, it's a long bridge to cross when you think about school versus prison. You know, we want children to go to school with a backpack, with fun stuff in it, and bring things into the classroom for show and tell. And all those dynamics have changed because parent structures have changed, households have divided much more than our years, I'm assuming, for most of us. So children don't have the oversight at home. So they don't always have the decision-making skill set about what to bring to school, what not to bring to school. So these are all little nuances that we deal with on a daily basis, trying to come to some comfortable place in the world for everybody to be included and involved safely. So that's this of what we do. You know, we also are very involved in video surveillance, something that we call visitor management, door access. So at any given time, we'll know who's in the building, when they got there, how long they've been there. Our visitor management system that we're moving to will give us alerts. If somebody's come to drop off a lunch box to little Johnny, they shouldn't be on the campus an hour later, but not everybody pays attention to everybody that's there at every minute. But an alarm would go off, and when I say an alarm, an email or a text message, some administrator that says, this visitor hasn't checked out yet. You know, find them on your campus and ask them to continue to help them. So paying attention to who's where, and why, and when, and for how long, they're all part of what we do throughout the course of our day. Real-time attendance is the ultimate goal so that we'll always know and be able to account for everybody safely. We do a lot of threat assessments. You know, a child writes an email, we have computer software systems that track language. So if a child writes an email that includes words like hurt or kill or beat you up, you know, we get notified of that, and we track those types of things. So sometimes children do it because they want attention, because it makes them feel empowered against their peers. Sometimes they want it for attention because they're living a life that's a struggle for them. But whatever the reason may be, it helps us identify students, weed them out of the classroom, talk to them as individuals, try to teach the whole self. You know, maybe English wasn't as important today as saying, hey, are you all right? What can we do to help you? My wife used to be a school nurse at Flat Rock, and she calls it the funny tummy. You know, when you have a child that comes to the nurse's office day after day with a tummy ache, well, maybe it's not a tummy ache, maybe it's related to something else. And what should we do to pay attention to that? Because paying attention to that child in middle school eliminates a lot of risk that you might have with that child later on in high school or later. So, in a nutshell, that's some of what we do here. I'm excited to be doing it here.